Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, and it's a great day to celebrate week one. It's here. We made it. 6 long, cold months. Our long-standing national nightmare is over. Real football we played this week, and basically forever. I don't even want to imagine what the next offseason is going to be like. Not today, Satan. And accordingly, guys, we are going to be breaking down 18 potential waiver wire moves to get you guys ahead of the masses in your fantasy football leagues as we begin this long, treacherous trek to fantasy championship glory. Of course, I cannot accomplish all this alone, and accordingly, I'm joined by the one, the only Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, Dwain, the Rock McFarland. Dwain, happy week one.
Happy week one, man. Very excited about it. I did draft 10 teams Sunday and Tuesday. You know how it goes, Ian. It's one of those things we're super excited. Most of them Fantasy Life Championship teams over Real Time Sports. Shout out, guys. They still have teams left, $300. Go check it out. And you love drafting them. And then when I got done, I suddenly had a little bit of anxiety because I was like, I'm going to have to manage all of these. And so I think I'm up to 20. I'm up. Total leagues that I have to manage waiver wires on is 24 now. So that's, I think I'm maxed. Best ball, it's fine. You draft it, you're done, you're through. Yeah. So these, though, we will have to pay attention to. And of course, we're hoping we win some money. So we got that too.
And it's whenever I tell people how many leagues I'm in, they're usually their first question is like, well, how do you even root for anything on a given Sunday? Isn't everything simultaneously good or bad? And you are correct. You end up just kind of being numb as you're trying to calculate in your mind exactly what just happened, in your 24 leagues. Personally, though, Dwain, I've kind of shoved most of these leagues aside, and I just live or die with my, again, shameful 8-man home league, put most of my emotional stock in that. How do you kind of manage those emotions on game day?
I just look at the players I have the most of. So like Trevion Henderson, 27%, if he's going well, that he's hitting a lot of teams. Dylan Sampson's on 29% of my teams. Tyler Warren, 26%. So I kind of root for the guys that I know I made some stands on and gained large exposure to. That's basically how I live. I will say I do miss those days of the purity of just one league, and everything was riding on that one league. So I also kind of take a hybrid approach. I have these 2 home dynasty leagues that have been long running. They started off as, normal redraft leagues, then they went to keeper, and then they eventually evolved into these dynasty leagues. So those are the 2 that I am watching for the most part. Those are the only 2 leagues I have the scores up for during the day. Otherwise, it's just kind of okay, I know I have a lot of that player. And then maybe come Tuesday, I might go look for my teams that have those players on them and just kind of see what the rest of the roster looks like. But yeah, mostly on Sunday, I'm just looking at the 2 home leagues that are dynasty leagues now.
I'm with you. Cannot start checking all those scores until after Sunday Night Football at the earliest. Otherwise, really going to be breaking the brain with that. Before we get into our DraftKings opening lines, guys, I did want to say that, we have a new in-season schedule going here for you. This week, we're going to have a Friday edition, but generally week 2 on. Dwayne and I are going to be getting on here after Sunday Night Football live, talking for probably a good 2 hours. They're letting us go long on that one, breaking down every single game. Monday is going to be myself and K-Dog Kendall Valenzuela, our waiver wire expert herself, going through that. Tuesdays, myself and Dwayne breaking down the critically acclaimed award-winning utilization report. Wednesdays, myself, Cooter, and Jake Trowbridge talking about all sorts of cool stuff. And then myself, Dwayne, and Matthew Friedman breaking down the rankings on Thursday to get you ready for the week. 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday. And again, after Sunday Night Football on Sunday. Cannot wait for this season. And again, we love that you are joining us here on the Fantasy Life Show. But with that, Dwayne, let's get into it. It's time for the DraftKings opening lines. Been a minute since we've been breaking down the news due to the long Labor Day weekend. But Dwayne, wanted to highlight 2 wide receiver injuries that I do think could really change the way people are looking at drafts, if you still have them, or more likely just your week 1 rosters. So kicking things off with some bad news, okay? It is Jaden Reed dealing with this foot injury that basically seems to be a Liz Frank, Dwayne. And again, this is a situation where I am not a doctor. I don't believe you ever finally got your medical degree either. Maybe a few more hours for you. I don't know about me, but I do trust what Dr. Jeff Mueller has to say about this. And he does a great job integrating his medical understandings into fantasy football goodness. You should all follow him over at X at JMThrivePT. His quote, "I have doubts that Jaden Reed can play through a Jones fracture. Very risky in terms of re-injury risk as well as production dip. Nearly all in on Matthew Golden at this rate." He then added wide receivers who required surgery for a Jones fracture. Marvin Jones, Julio Jones, Sammy Watkins, a list of other guys. Dwayne, wide receivers who were able to play through a Jones fracture without surgery. He couldn't find any. This does not seem good. I'm confused why the Packers are even letting this happen, but Jayden Reed continues to seemingly limp around every time we see him. We did draft some of Jayden Reed throughout August, Dwain, as I'm sure a lot of people did here. Not feeling great about that now. All we can do is move forward. But man, time being, close start sit decisions with Jayden Reed. I'm taking the guy not playing through a broken foot.
Yeah, I have him way down I have him way down the season ranks now. Basically, if you drafted off of my ranks this weekend, you didn't draft Jayden Reed because he was gone before it got to you. As much as I like him, and I think he's a solid year 3 breakout profile, I just don't see the point in it this year, Ian, given that it is the Jones fracture, and it's to do with the inability of blood to get to the area that needs to heal. So I'm with you. I'm kind of surprised. Like, if it seems like the Packers would just shut him down, like, and say, all right, let's put you on IR. Let's give it 4 to 6 weeks. I think actually the worst case scenario is him trying to play through it because of what we've heard about this list. Now, maybe he can be the guy that defies the odds. I just don't see the reason to force it. So if you guys are if you still have a draft coming up, I know my son Camden has his tonight. So a lot of, and I get it. You want to wait till the very end so you can have as much injury information primarily, right, and depth chart information as possible. And if you did that, you should be reacting accordingly with Jayden Reed as well as in the week 1 ranks. Ian, I have him way down there, but I do think that this helps a couple of other Packers. Matthew Golden, you and I, we were already in on, like, just bottom line, like where he got drafted in the NFL draft and then where he was going. Now that price tag has increased and since the news with Jayden Reed, but it's still affordable. I think he will be the wide receiver 1 for the team. The other name is obviously Tucker Kraft, a guy that did some really nice things in year 2 last year. They didn't target him a ton, but you could see him being a guy that, man, in this offense, very similar to what the 49ers run, just, letting him run under the defense and catch those balls and just do the yak stuff with it, right? You can work Matthew Golden more down the seam, do some things like that. You know that Romeo Doubs is your possession guy. The other name to think about here, though, if you're in a very deep league, is Dontavian Wicks. So Dontavian Wicks, I get it, guys. Can't catch a cold. I already feel the eyes rolling. I can see them, even though I can't see your eyes. I know your eyes are rolling right now. But the thing you got to know, 25% targets per route run. And so the guy just keeps doing this. When he's out there, Jordan Love is looking for him. So he's got traits that the team likes. Right now with Christian Watson out, probably I would guesstimate, again, not a doctor like you said, Ian, and more than like a few weeks short of getting that degree. I'm years away from having that degree, but you're looking at Christian Watson right now. I've got him projected to miss 12 games. It could end up being a little bit less. I know we've heard some stories of him being ahead of schedule, but you know how those stories go. It happened very late in the season last year. So Wicks would be a guy if you're in a league where you've got like 18 spots on your roster. If you're on a team that's got 14, probably not messing with it. We'll wait around. We'll see, unless you just got somebody on there you really don't like. But the guy has shown the underlying data points, and we know that over larger samples, often, Ian, the drop situation goes away. Now, that's not always. It hasn't been we haven't seen it go away for Quentin Johnson or this player yet, but I do think in deep leagues, Dontavian Wicks is a guy that you could throw on the end of your roster.
Notable guys last few years to lead the league in drops, and guess what? Still score a bunch of fantasy points. Deontay Johnson, and even cooler, Puka Nacua. So again, tends to be more of a factor of being open enough to get the targets in the first place. Hopefully Dontavian can, again, maybe just cheat with some stickum or something, whatever they got going on there in Green Bay. Just don't get caught. Dwayne, we started off with some bad news. Now, how about some good stuff, okay? We do have relatively, a good update on Jauan Jennings. He did return to practice on Monday, seemed to give both John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan a big hug. So we'll see if a contract extension gets announced. John Lynch did say last week that they were both talking about the contract and that there was a calf injury. So I'm not going to say he's completely in the clear. We'll find out this week what the actual practice participation is. But seemingly, Dwayne, he is on track to suit up in week 1, given he returned to practice. At least you would think the contract's now not going to be holding him out of the equation. So knowing that, Jauan Jennings right back into the wide receiver 3 range for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have him as a borderline wide receiver 3, just because we don't know if there is any truth to the calf injury and things like that. And he's been away from the team. So I didn't immediately put him into wide receiver 3 territory, but I do think he's borderline. I think the big thing for folks to remember with Jauan Jennings, the number one thing you'll hear is, oh man, all those points just came in week 3 when him and Brock Purdy went nuts together, and Brock basically just locked on to Jauan Jennings the whole game. First of all, I would say number one, like he did lock onto him that whole game and it worked out really good, but we can get rid of that. And we can just look at when Brandon Ayuk left this lineup. So from week 10 to week 18, the starting job was Juwan Jennings's, and he had a 28% target share, Ian, over that stretch. He averaged 14.1 fantasy points per game. So that would be a wide receiver too in fantasy. Ricky Pearsall is a guy that we also like. We've got him higher right now in the ranks, but let's face it, Pearsall had 2 good games to end the year. And before that, didn't really do anything. I get it, guys. He was shot, but he was back on the field and he was not earning targets until those final 2 games. Not that we're down on Pearsall. Like I said, we still will have him a little bit higher in the ranks this week, but I could easily see Juwan Jennings, if he is fully healthy, he's ready to go, coming out and being the guy that gets more targets than Pearsall in week 1. If you are drafting still, then yes, Juwan Jennings right now is like a round 8, round 9 pick. If you're playing in a home, that's in some of these drafts like the Fantasy Life Football Championship. But if you're playing in a home league, you might be able to get him more like round 10, round 11.
Week 1, Dwayne, I would start Juwan Jennings over Stephon Diggs, all Colts wide receivers, Rashid Shaheed, Bills wide receivers. Probably would still lean towards Ricky Pearsall, who you mentioned, Roma Dunze, Matthew Golden, Emeka Ibuka, among others. That sound about right to you?
It's going to be close. I think I have him wide receiver 41. I tweaked my rankings and projections this morning, and so made a few adjustments. But yeah, he's right in that range. I would say he's in a tier with some of those guys. Some of those guys is going to be a close call with. But yeah, I mean, Shakir, he's dealing with a high ankle sprain. So some of those players you named also have their own issues that they're dealing with, like Juwan Jennings. So Jennings definitely was a stronger player last year than most of the guys that you named, especially as a target earner.
Wouldn't call it the world's easiest matchup here against Mike McDonald's Seattle Seahawks. But again, if we are going to see Jennings healthy enough to start the season, guys, it really does have a chance to emerge as a wide receiver too, to Dwayne's point, during Brandon Ayuk's absence. So, all right, guys, good stuff there. Time to get some waiver wire moves, though. This has been our DraftKings opening lines. Football fans, the NFL season is here, and I team up with DraftKings Sportsbook to get you in the game with an incredible offer. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $300 instantly in bonus bets and $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's right. New customers bet just $5 get $300 in bonus bets plus $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. You can stay locked in all season long and use your bonus bets on same-game parlays for a shot at even bigger payouts, or feel the momentum swing with live betting as every drive unfolds. And if sports betting isn't live in your state yet, no worries. You can still play DraftKings Daily Fantasy for real cash prizes. So here's the play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up with promo code FANTASYLIFE, bet just $5, and you'll get $300 instantly in bonus bets, plus $200 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NFL season one to remember. All right, guys, it's Tuesday on week 1 as we record this, so I understand doing a waiver wire show for a team you just drafted sounds a little wild, so please do not overhaul all the guys you just took. That said, Dwayne, when we're in rounds 15 through 20, a lot of these guys are darts, so if we have the chance to throw more accurate darts down the waiver wire, why would we not try to bolster a strength there on the bench? So specifically, a lot of these running backs that we have gotten, relative updates for throughout the preseason are going to be our main focus. So want to touch on, again, 18 names total. No, we're not saying you need to try to add all these guys, but based on who you have in your league, use your best judgment. So, Dwayne, want to start off with a category for running backs. Don't yell at us. We are just making sure these are guys with ownership between 40 and 50% on ESPN and Yahoo. So I understand probably not in your league, but even if we help just one of you with these names, I would consider that a win. So, Dwayne, we have Chargers RB Najee Harris expecting to play Friday night against the Chiefs. Again, someone who is rostered in only 43% of ESPN leagues, 45% of Yahoo. Also have Cowboys running back Jaden Blue, not even listed on the week 1 injury report despite that ankle injury a few weeks ago. Again, only 43% roster on ESPN, 37% on Yahoo. And finally, Titans RB Tajay Spears. Yes, he's on IR. Also, yes, you might have an IR spot in your league. Cannot stress enough how great of a move that would be for you to pick up Spears, stash him, and then go ahead and pick up whoever you dropped in the first place. So Najee, Blue, and Spears, Dwayne, 3 guys where, again, maybe we're not available, but if they are, I can certainly see replacing some of those deeper handcuff options that you likely put on your roster in round 17 or so.
Yeah, and just a couple of notes on these. So with Najee Harris, I know like he gets the bad rap, but Ian's done a good job of actually talking about how well Najee did play last year, one of his better years since his rookie season, just as far as the underlying data points go. But the big thing is he's a guy, Ian, that we know if something happened to Amari and Hampton, he's the clear cuff. And I mean, we've got Hassan Haskins behind him. I think they signed Kamani Vidal back to the practice squad, but we didn't see much from either one of those players last year. So I think if something happened to Hampton, knock on wood, hope that's not the case. And we're talking about a guy that can have 70% of the rushing attempts. I mean, and so it's not super easy to find guys with that clean path, especially on a team we know that wants to pound the rock. He also has other outs as he gets more healthy. Week 1, I've got 62% of the carries going to Hampton, 27% to Najee. But we could see that level out a little bit, especially if the rookie Hampton, doesn't start strong. He fumbles. You know how these things work out. You could suddenly find Najee with a little bit more standalone value. I think the primary way Najee ends up being a hit for your roster is if something were to happen to Hampton. But Greg Roman is willing to rotate these running backs. We talk about Jaden Blue. I've got him projected as the running back 2 right now on the Cowboys because he is really the one that's different from Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. They kind of have overlapping skill sets. Like if Javonte went down, you might see more Miles Sanders. But I think to start the year, Jaden Blue is probably going to be out there on some of the passing downs, might get the 2-minute offense, is going to be the change of pace back. He's the guy that they hope can bring that explosiveness to the offense. And you could see a scenario, Ian, where if the other 2 veterans are struggling and the Cowboys want to be a pass-heavy team anyway, you might just see more Jaden Blue than you see of those other 2 guys. So I really like your call out on him. And then finally with Tajay Spears, the only thing you guys need to know, he does have the high ankle sprain, but he is on IR. And if you've got an IR spot on your roster, this makes him even more appealing because you can slide him down there. I just did that in a league that I'm in earlier today. And Tajay Spears, over the last 3 games, when they gave him that full workload, Ian, 27, 22, and 13 fantasy points. That's 20.7 per game. And the reason why, he can break the big plays and he works on passing downs. He is a very good receiver out of the backfield on a team that we've talked about really has Calvin Ridley. Now, we like Chigakonkwo. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. But ultimately, they don't really have a for sure number 2. And that's a scenario where we can see the backs get fed more. So love the call out on Tajay Spears.
Again, guys, Tajay Spears, RB5 in the fantasy playoffs last year, as Dwain stated. Amir Abdullah was RB8, so I'm not saying that's a be-all, end-all when trying to evaluate running backs for this year. But more importantly is that the Titans were willing to leave him on the field for large chunks of those games with Tony Pollard quite a bit banged up. Really is a situation where we have this, again, explosive pass-catching archetype. That's why I want to target Spears and Blue in particular. Now, Dwain, for one of my favorite kind of recurring segments of you, not in my league, pal, but maybe just in case, okay? So we're looking at guys between kind of a 20 and 39% rostership, if you will. I want to start with Jaguars RB Bashaw Tootin. Dwayne, I'm doing a weekly kind of 10 things article, and one of the things that I'm basically asking in one of those sections is if I had a chance to talk to a fantasy football genie and just get kind of some workload questions answered for a week in advance. Number 1 on that list for me is what is going on in this Jaguars backfield, okay? Because between Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, and Bashaw Tootin, I really do think someone's going to be skyrocketing up the ranks. And God forbid it's Bashaw Tootin, who again is only rostered in 38% of ESPN and 58% of Yahoo leagues right now. I mean, that could be huge because we're talking about a guy similar to Jaden Blue. Yes, there's handcuff contingent injury upside here, but there's also the potential for him just to take over the whole dang backfield.
Yeah, for sure. Tootin, not quite like the straight correlation or the direct comparison to Bucky Irving last year, but kind of similar. Irving played really great in the preseason and clearly worked his way up to being the number 2 guy behind Rachaad White. So we knew we had this clear path, but he does have a similar talent profile. This is a guy that can break the long runs. Wasn't necessarily the greatest receiver in college, but he is somebody, if you get the ball to him in space, you design this kind of stuff, which is honestly, guys, kind of what the Bucs did last year with Bucky Irving, especially when they had some injuries to Chris Godwin. Mike Evans missed some time. Bucky really boomed in those games. So I think when you look at Tootin, you're going to need to be patient. I would anticipate week 1 being more of a rotation between ETN and Bigsby. We never know, with maybe a sprinkle of Bashaw Tootin in the mix. But I do think, to your point, Ian, he is the guy that if I'm putting a chip on, that, man, by week 5 or 6, he's taking over. He's great to look at. So if you're playing in a really shallow league, he might be a tougher ad. Playing in a medium to deeper league, 12 teams where you guys have maybe 3 wide receivers, 2 flex spots, you got 6 bench spots. That's a league where I definitely want Bashaw Tootin, and I just want to be able to sit there and be able to be patient with him. If you're needing somebody to plug in your lineup week 1, we're not telling you to do that with Tootin, but he is the kind of guy that could help you win down the stretch.
Dwain, if we are in a league where we used 2 of our first 4-round picks, which was a strategy you and me were trying to get across to people, so we're good at running back, okay? We are just looking for pure bench upside depth. Would you keep Tootin over guys like Brian Robinson, Nick Chubb, Braylon Allen, and Austin Eckler?
Yeah, I like him over all those guys as far as long-term value for the season. Any one of them could have contingency upside, break their way. Obviously, if CMC went down, we would have Brian Robinson Jr. at the top of the list. But I do think Tootin, of the names that you gave, is the one that has the most likely opportunity to work his way into becoming the starter. I know folks will say, well, 4th-round pick. Guys, remember how deep this running back class is. It's a very deep class, and that pushed some guys that would have normally been day 2 picks into day 3. He did go early in round 4. It's a team that's got the new coach with Liam Cohen. We've got the new general manager with James Gladstone. Gladstone, even in his interview, talked about Tootin, and so he's a guy that he definitely likes. And so they wanted to get him at the top of round 4. So yes, I would like him if I'm looking for someone, like you said, that roster construction that you talked about. You started off really strong, and you're just looking for a guy that, man, he could just force his way in over your running back 2 by like week 5 or 6. I think that Tootin is a name.
Another guy who I believe should be right next to Tootin, honestly, in our rest of season ranks at this point. Dolphins RB2 Ollie Gordon, who again really impressed in the preseason and also just ran as pure as anyone with the injuries to teammates. Was he going to pass Jalen Wright in the depth chart anyway? Maybe. Guess what? Doesn't matter, because he's looking like he's going to miss the entirety of September at least with an undisclosed lower body injury. Alexander Madison, who was reportedly impressing before he suffered a season-ending neck injury, is of course out of the picture as well. Even Devon Achane, who we do expect to play in week 1 after returning to practice, is actively dealing with a cap issue. So again, Dwain, Ollie Gordon, someone who really was getting hyped up a ton this time last year in some of these way too early first round mock drafts because of how good his 2023 was with Oklahoma State. Certainly seems to be running pure right now. And again, even though I feel like we've been talking about him forever, 31% owned on ESPN, 34% on Yahoo. So again, similar argument, I think, to Bashal Tootin, Dwain, where yes, there's contingent upside value for Ollie Gordon, but also who's to say he's not going to take this lead early down role in an offense that doesn't exactly want to give Devon Achane 300 plus carries anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ollie Gordon as well. I think he's a tier below Tootin, so I think he's a little bit more reliant on the contingent value. I don't see him like taking over a huge role from Achane. Now, if Achane's dinged up, dealing with injuries, there's definitely an opportunity. I think the thing, though, that you have to like about Ollie Gordon is he's going to basically get this first month to establish himself. And this is an offense, if they can get back on track. It wasn't good last year, but we did see 2 years ago it did support Raheem Mostert as well as Devon Achane. And so in that sort of scenario, if he kind of played more of that Mostert role, then yeah, he really could have standalone value. Now that's going to, again, it's just going to require the Dolphins to look more like what we saw in 2023, 2022 than what we saw in 2024. So I like Tootin over Ollie Gordon, but I think Ollie Gordon is definitely in the mix. He's a name that if you've got a spot, and you need some running back help, he's a good ad.
Well, note the Dolphins did sign JaMychal Hasty and Jeff Wilson to their practice squad. So again, just like any other backfield, it's not going to be 100% snaps for, Ollie Gordon or Devon Achane when they're out there. But yeah, certainly someone who, again, has been rising up the ranks in August and deservedly so. Before we move on, Dwayne, I did want to give a quick shout out to Dylan Sampson as well, because he is only owned on 20% of ESPN rosters, 48% of Yahoo. Quinshon Judkins could sign with the Browns by the time we're done with this episode. So again, I'm not saying Sampson's going to be the lead running back for the entire season, but I know we drafted some hero zero RBs where guess what? You're looking at that RB2 spot and not feeling great about it. Dylan Sampson is potentially someone who could, at a minimum, help get you through some of these early weeks.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument for Sampson over both of these guys. It's fine if you want to put them in the same tier. I would take him ahead of Ollie Gordon. I do think he's going to have a chance to take over the backfield early in the year. Even if Quinshon Judkins signs, he hasn't been with the team, right? And then he could still face disciplinary action from the NFL. Like we could see a 4 or 6 game suspension. The other real challenge is people are acting like this is about to happen. You got to remember, if a rookie signs their deal and then they get a suspension for off the field issues, it takes away their incentives, right? And a lot of their guaranteed stuff. So I guarantee you that his agent is trying to get that out of this contract. Are the Browns going to be willing to bend and set that sort of a precedent? Because, all the other owners are going to be looking at him being like, dude, you can't break this rule. If you do it for him, now we're going to have to do it for all of these other players in the future that are rookies. Hey, maybe that would be considered a win for the players. So I think this deal's hardly done. Like, I think there's a scenario where even if they get through some of this stuff, I mean, it could be 10 weeks or they might not be able to get something signed for 5 or 6 weeks. And then if a suspension happens on top of that, so Sampson, he could have a good chunk of the season to establish himself, and he's playing really great at that point. Like, who's to say once Judkins is on the field that he even has a very large role if Sampson is tearing it up? Now, if Sampson stinks, it's okay. I mean, you can just cut him from your roster. To your point, Ian, you're just adding him off the waiver wire. A very electric player. If you guys go watch him, put him on film, yes, you're going to see some long runs that are very fluky based on the offense he played in, but watch the plays where it's not clean in front of him. This guy has really good vision, has a great ability to layer the different moves, like one move to make a guy miss, then can get past the next guy and then break an arm tackle. He can really layer these things together. Kind of reminds me of, and I don't want to go crazy, but Clinton Portis had this to his game. Clinton Portis was a little bit bigger than him, and he also has long speed. So I really do like Dylan Sampson. I would order these: Bajal Tutin, Dylan Sampson, Ollie Gordon. And I think you could make an argument for Sampson because we're pretty sure he's going to have a big role in week 1. So he's going to have a chance to really establish himself. So all 3 really good names.
Work with the starters alongside Joe Flacco in that last preseason game. I mean, I'm Dwain. I know you're in some deep leagues as well. I have a couple 14-team leagues where we got to start 2 running backs and then 3 flexes. So if you guys do find yourselves in those situations, I really don't think starting Dylan Sampson in week 1 is that crazy of an idea, especially in its potential shootout between the Browns and, again, that just piss poor Bengals defense. So, Dwain, now we get into the roots, though. We are calling this the Show 25 on Next Page waiver darts. As always, guys, there's 2 rules in life. Good things do not happen when you get behind the wheel drunk or when you hit next 25 on your waiver wire provider. So it is a situation, Dwain, where, again, we're going deep here, but hey, that's the case in a lot of these leagues that have 20 plus rounds and big benches. I want to start off with this Texans backfield because we have 2 names here. Woody Marks, who's a little bit more owned, 11.8% on ESPN, 9% on Yahoo, and also Dameon Pierce, who is sub 6% on both. Where do you fall with this? Because I feel like when we've been drafting, we've been getting more Dameon Pierce. That said, we have a lot of good friends who I would consider sharp in the industry, and I've seen a lot of them also being more than willing to take on Woody Marks. Personally, again, I just think that having a dart to this situation in general is a good idea. But if you only had one, Dwain, who would you be throwing it at?
Yeah, so I mean, look, the thesis on Woody Marks is that he caught a ton of balls in college. So if he did work himself into the starting role, and he's also catching passes, we know what that means, right? That's the fantasy cheat code at running back. Not necessarily known for his ability between the tackles, not saying he can't do it, guys. That's where I do think Dameon Pierce is the better player. I would say this. I think both are fine. But if I was making a bet like that one of these guys could surprise us and be the starter in week 1 and it's not Nick Chubb, I think that it's Pierce that we get the surprise on. And then suddenly you're like, oh, okay, we'll see what happens with this Joe Mixon thing. But maybe I'll have Dameon Pierce out here getting 55, 60% of the rushing attempts for the Texans. We get it. Bad offensive line, but it could be an offense that definitely rebounds. I don't think it can be worse than what we saw last year from their offensive line play. Do have CJ Stroud at the helm. They've got some nice passing game weapons, so we could see them put up some points. It could also be a situation, Ian, where they share time. It's Woody Marks taking the pass downs, and it could be Dameon Pierce sharing with Nick Chubb. So we don't know for sure. It's going to be a tricky situation. Probably don't want any of them, honestly, in my lineup week 1. If I had to choose, it would be Nick Chubb. But I do think that Dameon Pierce is the one with that sneaky chance that he could end up being the starter in week 1. And it's this big surprise. And now he's suddenly on everybody's waiver wire column.
Maybe it's just a situation where you get that week 1 and just boom, and then you're able to actually trade the guy while his value is a little bit higher. Again, a lot of possibilities. That's why we are trying to uncover every single stone, no matter how deep on that depth chart. Brings us to our next running back, Dwain, someone who's owned on just 6.5% of ESPN rosters and 10% of Yahoo. Rams running back Blake Corum, who, again, maybe wasn't the poster child of preseason utilization, but based on what we did see, clearly does seem to be working as the RB2 ahead of rookie Jarquez Hunter. So, man, Dwain, there's even been some notes from, OC Mike LaFleur saying that they do want to get back to more of a 1-2 punch with Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. I pushed back on that sentiment because GM Les Snead was saying the same exact thing last year. Sean McVay also had good things to say because guess what? Most NFL coaches and executives are going to say good things about the guys they just drafted and plan on playing this year. But even in the absence of standalone value, Dwain, if we just see that it's only Kyren Williams and Blake Corum out there, that instantly makes Corum one of the most sought after handcuffs we can find.
Yeah, and if we did see something happen with Kyren Williams, I mean, Jarquez Hunter could enter the picture. He also has looked good this preseason, but to your point, like the thing we're taking away from the preseason, it was Blake Corum working with the twos. That's also what we were hearing from camp reports. So, I mean, taking the data points that we have, I feel pretty confident that Blake Corum gets the first shot. The other thing, to your point, is we have seen McVay multiple times just ride one guy. And it's not like it's always been this elite player. We saw it with Darrell Henderson. We've seen it even back, I can't remember the CJ Anderson. Remember that, Ian, whenever they rode him and he ran all over our Cowboys in the playoffs? That wasn't good. So it's not just been the Todd Gurley types that we've actually seen McVay do this with. And Kyron Williams, another perfect example, not a high round draft pick, not this super huge, super big player. But once McVay trusts a guy, like he has shown a willingness to really ride them. And so I would say that Blake Corum would get that first opportunity. And it's really good to have him on your bench just in case that happens. Just three other quick names here, Ian. We don't have to talk about them a lot, but if these guys are gone, Keaton Mitchell playing behind Derrick Henry. Keaton Mitchell, guys, 2 years ago, you might not remember it, but he essentially looked like Devon Achane 2.0. Like, this guy is a very fast player, gets to the lane quickly, and he has this home run ability. Not a real big player, but we've come to know in today's day and age in the league, we don't always have to look for these guys that are 205 pounds. I don't think he suddenly gets, 60, 70% of the rushing attempts. I think Justice Hill would be involved. They'd probably let Rasheen Ali, or they'd add another back. But Mitchell would be the name I would be the most excited about. Then I would say Kendre Miller, based on all the data we have from preseason training camp, very clearly the running back 2 in New Orleans. Now, not an offense we're as excited about as the Ravens, so I would definitely take Keaton Mitchell over him. And then the last one, man, is Brashard Smith. Brashard Smith is going to start off this year in a gadget role. Like what we saw in the preseason, they put him on these jet sweeps, they design a screen. What we saw in the preseason is when they put him on the field, especially with Mahomes, they just got him the ball. So he's not going to be a guy you're going to have in your lineup early, but if you play in one of these larger leagues, he is a great guy to stash at the end of your bench if you're not crazy about your upside at running back, because you could get this Jerick McKinnon kind of role if things work out weird. Pacheco misses some time. You could suddenly be looking at a guy that we thought, man, this guy's never going to be a running back 1 this year. And then suddenly he is a running back 1. So Brashard Smith, very good receiver out of the backfield.
To remind everyone, in 2022, guys, Jerick McKinnon, even post multiple injury, Jerick McKinnon, man, 56 catches, 512 yards, 9 touchdowns for those Chiefs. So again, if you are buying into the idea, Doc, I think a lot of us are, Mahomes could have a, y'all must have forgot sort of season here. Getting back in that MVP conversation would make a lot of sense if someone like Brashard Smith is going to be a bigger factor than expected in that passing game. So good stuff on RBs, Dwain. Now we're going to talk about some deeper sleeper wide receivers. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at GoPuff. Guys, imagine this coming Sunday. You're sweating as the Patriots are mere inches from the goal line and have Ramondre Stevenson on the field instead of Travion Henderson. But then something magical happens. Stevenson gets stuffed as they hit the 2-minute warning. That's right. He's stuffed. And now guess what? You're understandably stressed, wondering if Josh McDaniels will do the right thing and give Henderson a shot at the touchdown after the break. So you do what anyone would do. You go to the fridge to grab a beer and chips to calm your nerves. Just one problem. You're out of both. This leaves you with 2 choices. Leave him miss Travion's first career touchdown that you can rub in all your opponents' faces, or simply go to GoPuff, where in as fast as 15 minutes, your beer and snacks are at your door and you're back to chilling on the couch. Even better, you can get 60% off your first order with code FANTASYLIFE60. That's 60% off. GoPuff on their homepage only offers you 50. Not here, not now. Code FANTASYLIFE60 for 60% off, only at GoPuff. Dwain, as we try to stress throughout, draft season here, again, generally you should be keeping more running backs and wide receivers on your bench. Every roster's different. If you find yourself with only 2 or 3 reliable wide receivers, okay, then that's going to change things. But I would say most of those running backs we talked about, I'm trying to get those on my benches more times than not. But hey, now we're going to talk about some of those not times. So I want to talk about Isaac TeSlaa. You always try to correct me. I think I got it. TeSlaa on the naming there. God forbid something happens to Jameson Williams. God forbid something happens to Amon-Ra St. Brown. This dude will be on the cover of every single waiver wire article. And hey, man, if this dude's as good as he looked in the preseason, might have a chance to F around and get even some standalone value. He is now the number 3 wide receiver in Detroit after all, after they shipped Tim Patrick to Jacksonville.
Yeah, I think that's the big signal here for TeSlaa, right? There's actually multiple data points. Number one, they swapped 3rd-round picks this year and then traded away 2 3rd-round picks next year to make a move up to go get TeSlaa. So the Lions obviously love this player. We've seen the Lions be pretty good, Ian, at figuring out who the good players on offense are. Laporta was a hit. He was kind of a surprise as an early round 2 pick that year. We look at Amon-Ra St. Brown was a round 4 pick. They hit on that. And so TeSlaa could really be the latest name in that group of players. And their willingness to go ahead and move on from a veteran like Tim Patrick and go ahead and put this man in the lineup, I think that that's a very positive sign. To your point, if we've got Amon-Ra running hot, J-Mo, you and I both really love this year. We could see another step forward from him. Last year was really just his first year to play. And then Laporta is still a young talent that could still be ascending. So it's going to be tough for TeSlaa to really carve out a role where you're going to feel confident putting him in your lineup every week, unless you're playing in one of those leagues like Ian's in where he plays with 32 teams. You'd probably be happy to have Isaac TeSlaa in your starting lineup in that one, Ian. But he is a great name because of what you mentioned. He could carve out some standalone value and really surprise us, or B, the contingency upside is really where it's at. If something happened and one of those other guys went down, is there really an offense? Can we name more than 5 offenses where we want to have a player that if they flash some sort of talent, which TeSlaa has, scoring all these touchdowns in preseason, it's hard to think other offenses where we would be as excited as what we would be with TeSlaa, with the Lions, with Jared Goff, and what they like to do.
And again, guys, just in terms of relative athletic score, RAS, which isn't the be-all, end-all for evaluating players, but I'd rather the guys we're targeting be freak among freak athletes, and TeSlaa really is one of them. I think he was 10th or whatever it was in the score, going back all the way to 1987. Also a favorite from our own Thor Nystrom, so shout out Thor for being on the scent, going all the way back to January. Dwain, this next one is someone that you've been hyping up as one of your favorite late-round picks of the position. It is Denver Broncos wide receiver, not Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin. So here's the thing, man. Again, we've been following this Broncos wide receiver preseason usage. I know our own Matthew Friedman is over his head on Marvin Mims. So consider this, Dwain. Tired, Marvin Mims, preseason starter. Wired, Troy Franklin, preseason starter. Because honestly, man, for my money's worth, as much as I do want to believe in Mims, I do think if Pat Bryant is going to come and take someone's job here, I lean towards Mims probably being the odd man out.
Yeah, so when you look at Franklin, the big thing is we heard good news about him throughout camp. Now, we also heard good news about Pat Bryant, so it's hard for us to be certain on this one. But once you layer in the preseason utilization, and this is around 2 young players, right? It's not like there's a vet. They might just be resting and letting the young guy play. These are 2 young players battling for playing time. It was Troy Franklin working ahead of Pat Bryant. He had a 70% route participation rate out there with Bo Nix. So I think he's the wide receiver 3 to start the season. And it could be a battle. It could be a rotation. Pat Bryant, the guy that they took in round 3, many thought was a round 4 or 5 pick, but Sean Payton handpicked this guy. I can't remember who he called, if he called him Marcus Colston or if he called him Michael Thomas. He was always comparing his guys to like some of these best players that we remember. We're like, man, really? Can all these guys be that way? But to be fair, if you go back and you look at Marcus Colston, he was a round 7 pick. If you look at Troy Franklin, he fell in the draft 2 years ago. Many thought he was a round 1 pick. Then he fell to day 2, kept going, made it all the way to round 4. This is also the teammate of Bo Nix in college, so they could have some natural chemistry. But man, he is the guy that can push vertical down the field. Cortland Sutton can do that too, more of a contested ball player though. Franklin's the guy you can get into space and let him really work afterwards. And if Marvin Mims, who's dealing with an injury right now, by the way, if Marvin Mims is unable to, hold on to that full-time role, I think it might be Troy Franklin that steps into the wide receiver 2 role. So love getting a look at someone like this at the bottom of my roster, especially to what you said, Ian, on the right kind of team where I'm like, man, I got 3 good wide receivers and my next guy is like a veteran. I need one more upside play. Troy Franklin is a name, and we know that he is available in a lot of leagues.
I really do hope that collegiate chemistry starts to show up, Dwain, because honestly, for my money's worth last year, it was some of the worst I've seen from former college teammates since I would say Mason Rudolph and James Washington going back 5 or 6 years. But again, based on what we saw from Bo Nix and honestly, to an extent, Troy Franklin, I think we can believe we have brighter futures for both. So the one interesting thing that stuck out to me last year, including the playoffs, Cortland Sutton, obvious number 1 wide receiver in Denver. He had 144 targets. Franklin only had 56. Targets that were thrown at least 30 yards downfield, though, Dwain. Sutton had 9. Franklin had 12, man. Unfortunately, they only hooked up on one of those, and it happened all the way in the wild card game. But when Sean Payton is drawing up these well-designed deep shot plays, a lot of times they are going to Troy Franklin. So again, we'll just say if you are in these deeper leagues and you need a guy to give you those one-hitter-quitter 50-yard scores, I do think Troy Franklin is going to be racking up those air yards, which can help us feel good about it. Maybe it's early in week 1. Tennessee Titans, L'Jarius Sneed still dealing with a little bit of a knee issue. You could imagine Two more, Dwayne. These are in the same vein as Tajay Spears, where no, we cannot rely on them early. But if you do have that IR spot in your league, I think it makes sense. First of all, 49ers wide receiver Brandon Ayuk. He's probably taken in your league, or you don't have an IR spot, so I get it. But again, just surprising to me. 40% on ESPN still open, 51% on Yahoo. So even if we help just one of you out there, wanted to get that off my chest. I think the bigger one, though, Dwayne, is Panthers wide receiver Jalen Coker. Unfortunately, with his quad injury, he will be missing at least the first month of the season. But man, just 8% owned on ESPN and Yahoo alike. Someone where I think if we look up at the end of the season and see that he's the second most productive wide receiver on Carolina, we would not be surprised.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Actually, I think when you watch Jalen Coker and you watch Xavier Legette, like Coker's the more complete player at this time. Now, Legette could make strides forward, right? He was a rookie last year, but in college, he was very similar. He was a very gadgety player, and then he would do some things down the field, had that huge final year, was an older prospect. So I'm not saying that Legette can't break out, but based on what I watched last year and looking at the underlying data, Coker was actually the better of these two players. He's also going to get to play from the slot, which was very friendly. Now, Adam Thielen, obviously a proven commodity in the NFL, but it worked out really good between Adam Thielen and with Mr. Bryce Young. We obviously have Ted McMillan coming in. We fully expect him to lead this team in targets. But before Coker got hurt, I had Jalen Coker as the number 2 target earner on the team after Adam Thielen was moved to Minnesota. So if you do have that IR spot, I think it's a really good call. This guy is from a small school, has had to kind of scrap to stay around on the team, and now he suddenly found himself in a starting role. It's also just one of these stories you love to see. Ian, I'll throw out 3 more just really quick names. Alec Iomanner for the Tennessee Titans. The only thing standing in his way, guys, and I think I can stop with this point, is Van Jefferson. Okay, we'll move on to the next guy, and that's Kyle Williams. Been dealing with a little bit of an injury, but he is playing on the Patriots. We've got Stephon Diggs, an older player returning from the ACL. Ian just talked about how he would have him below Jawan Jennings because we don't know for sure what Stephon Diggs is going to look like in week 1. We think he'll probably be fine this season, but really, if you look at the Patriots wanting to add a spark back to their offense, we know Trevion Henderson is the number 1 name in the way they can do that, but Kyle Williams, a guy that they took in round 3 that originally when mock draft started this year was going undrafted. And then he slowly moved up the board, and then he skyrocketed up the board at the end of the process. And the Patriots ended up being the team getting him. He's got Mac Hollins standing in his way, Kayshon Boutte, who's already had multiple years of playing big roles as far as route participation. He did the end of his rookie year, and they did last year, was not able to show that he was a target earner. We like Pop Douglas. He's kind of a move the chains guy in the slot, but I think that Kyle Williams is the name. And again, you need to be in a deeper league that you can just stash this guy on your roster. And then the final name I'll give is Torrey Horton, another rookie, also dealing a little bit with an injury right now, but he is on the Seahawks, and he is the guy that allowed them to move on from Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So he will be the 3rd wide receiver when they go to 3 wide receiver sets. He will be working down the field. And you guys know as well as we do, even though Sam Darnold may see some ghosts, he's willing to push the ball down the field, and he can accurately push the ball down the field. So Torrey Horton would be one other rookie to remember here, along with Alec Iomanner and Kyle Williams.
Good names there, Mr. Dwain. Now time for some tight ends. Everyone's favorite game, start, marry, cut. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Paramount Plus. You can't count on much these days, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. That's right, football fans. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday on CBS and Paramount Plus all season long. This year's schedule is absolutely stacked with rivalries and revenge games, including the next chapter of the epic Bills-Chiefs saga. So stay connected to it all on any device, at home or on the go. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today and count on Sundays for another must-see season of the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Again, Dwayne, I would hope that everyone has their tight end situation figured out ahead of week 1. But if not, let us help you. We're going to be running through, again, start, marry, cut for guys that are owned on under 50% of ESPN rosters. So Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz, Jonnu Smith, Darren Waller, Brenton Strange, Chig Okonkwo, Mike Gesicki, and Juwan Johnson was the player pool I listed. Dwayne, who are you starting?
Yeah, I'm going to start Chig Okonkwo. And when I originally responded, I'm going to start and marry Chig Okonkwo. But I just I think there's multiple data points working in his favor. Number one, we saw when he was a very young player that he's a guy you could scheme things up for. Had a nice targets per route run, nice yards per route run on a very small sample. Those things don't always work out. He was always really more of a part-time player. But at the end of last year, under this new staff, they finally just gave him a full-time role, and he did pretty good things with him in week 16 and 17, 83 and 87% route participation rates, utilization score of 87 and 78. Remember, guys, that's on a scale of 0 to 100. So an 87 and 78 is really good. He scored 14 fantasy points per game over those final 2 games. And then the last data point we have here is this preseason, he really wasn't coming off the field. Now, we did see Gunnar Helm operate in a little bit in those last 2 games, but mostly Chig was leaving after the first quarter with the starters. And so I think when you stack it all up, the same staff returning, what he did at the end of last year, what he's done so far this preseason. And again, going back to what we talked about earlier when we talked about Tajay Spears, we don't know for sure what's going to happen. We just named Alec Iomanner, a round 4 pick that happened to burn Travis Hunter up and down the field, if you guys remember that. But we don't know if he's going to be good. We know that we have Calvin Ridley, and that's really all. And so Chig Okonkwo has a really good opportunity, in my opinion, to be the number 2 player in this offense, and he has shown the ability to earn those targets in the past. He had a 27% target share over that 2-game stretch. I get, guys, very small sample, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was at like 19 or 20. If he's at 19 or 20% target share as a tight end, he's probably going to finish in the top 10, and he's sitting out here on waiver wire. So I love Chig Okonkwo.
Can't believe you would stray away from Mr. Sicko start himself. Zach Ertz is my start in this one. Tight end 10 in PPR points per game last season. That happened, guys. And man, can Zach Ertz get any slower at this point? He's been moving the same for the last 5 or 6 years anyway. Still very much could wind up being, I would say, the number 3 target in this Washington offense. A little bit more competition with Deebo Samuel, sure. But man, guys, again, you just look at it. He hurdled a man in the NFC Championship game, and it's like none of you even care. Also, wouldn't be surprised if Jaden Daniels has to get rid of that ball a little more quickly than he would prefer against that ferocious Giants pass rush. We will see what happens. But yeah, Zach Ertz, again, someone that maybe get you by a few weeks here or there. Again, Dwain, you unfortunately cannot marry Chig Okonkwo. Sorry, man, you do have a misses at home. That said, you want to look at Jaguars tight end 1, Brenton Strange.
Yeah, I mean, well, that sounds weird. Like everyone loves some Strange is what you're saying. Brenton Strange, look, I like Chig better, okay? But this is a guy that last year we had 2 separate times where we didn't have Evan Ingram in the lineup. The first time he averaged 9 fantasy points per game, and you guys are like rolling your eyes. Guys, if you go back and look at the history of tight ends and like what it takes to be like a top 12, top 14 guy, it's 10 and 9 points are like doing it sometimes. And he's a 3rd-year player. He's a former 2nd-round pick from Penn State. So I just think there are some positives here. We know the offense is going to flow through Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, but they need a third. Is it going to be him? Is it going to be Diami Brown? I mean, Diami Brown, in my opinion, did some nice things last year in the Commanders offense, but he's never really been someone that's earned a lot of targets. And if we look at what we have with Brenton Strange, he had a 20% targets per route run on the season last year. And that's right there in that low end tight end 1 range. So young player has flashed a little bit, now is going to be the starter for the Jaguars and what we hope is an improved offense with Liam Cohen. We did see last year Cade Otton, especially in those games where if they were missing one of their other targets, they would just pepper him underneath. And so I think that could be something as well as with Brenton Strange. If you have one of those other starters out for any period of time, we might like him a little bit more in those games. But young player, has shown a little bit of target earning ability on an offense that we hope is ascending. So I will go with Brenton Strange as the man I'm going to marry.
Can we just clip that last part, please? Social media people, that would be great. I'm going to be marrying Mr. Mike Gesicki. He is, guys, getting a new contract from Cincinnati. That was cool. Joe Burrow shouted him out. That was even cooler. My goodness, we could be sitting here after week 1 looking at Gesicki with the 70% route rate, emerging as the number 3 target on the freaking Cincinnati Bengals, going crazy wondering why we didn't have him on our roster already. Not you, though, a scholar, because you will realize the opportunity at hand. So I admit I felt better about this before they had signed Noah Fant and everything. So it's not surefire, but this dude's 3.5% owned on ESPN, 7% on Yahoo. If you are in a deep league, guys, again, I cannot think of a better lottery ticket on your bench than Mike Gesicki if you need the trouble. I should say if you're having trouble at the tight end position. So I just feel like if we had this archetype, again, potential number 3 target in the Bengals offense for a guy who we know is a plus pass catcher at the position, if that was some 5th round rookie, people will be more excited about it, but we're bored about Mike Gesicki because he got misused for a few years in Miami and New England. Not you, Mike Gesicki. I'm marrying the man. Yeah, Love to say that, Dwayne. We got to work on this segment, but I'm still liking it.
Finally,
you're going to be. I do too. Finally, you're going to be cutting Jonnu Smith. I'm going to be cutting Hunter Henry. I think we're both doing them for personal reasons. You don't like Arthur Smith. I don't like the fact that Hunter Henry, despite being in the league for 40 years, has never cleared 700 receiving yards. Can we just agree this is a little bit personal here?
Well, yeah, it is personal with Arthur Smith because we know Jonnu Smith's a good player. We saw it last year. But when Jonnu, I know people talk about, oh man, in Atlanta, like Jonnu was pretty good. He was very boomer bust, Ian. The challenge was how many routes was he going to get because he had to share with Kyle Pitts? Well, he's going to be dealing with the same thing here with Pat Freiermuth. I think this is going to be a rotation and a run-heavy offense. We'll see. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to challenge Mr. Arthur Smith and push some buttons. I can't wait to see what those fireworks look like. So I think the pass rate does come up a little bit, but it's also a very slow offense. And Aaron Rodgers has historically, over like the last 5 years, run a slow offense as well. So I just don't see a ton of attempts to go around. And then when you're going to share time with another player, and Pat Freiermuth, like, we don't think he's like an all-pro or anything, but he's a good player. Pat Freiermuth, he is a good tight end in the National Football League. So my thought process on Jonnu is he's going to be highly frustrating unless something happens to Freiermuth. I just don't think you're ever going to know how to start him. Like if we went back to that year where he was with Arthur Smith in Atlanta, he went for 15-5, 12-7, 13-6, and then he gave you 5-7, 2-3, 21. Yes, put him back in the lineup. 1.1, 0. 3, 6.7. So we know he's a talented player, but it's going to be maddening in this offense and trying to figure out which weeks to start him. I'm just going to cut him. Now, if something were to happen to Pat Freiermuth, that definitely changes the calculus for Jonnu Smith.
Fair enough, Mr. Dwain, but it would not be the most Arthur Smith thing ever to just make Jonnu Smith a thing again. We will see what happens. Again, gotta love what's going to go down here in week 1. That's been our tight end cut, start, marry report. We do have a quick QB streamer, some DST, and God forbid, even a kicker section in this economy, no less. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Premier National Sports. Guys, if you are someone you know as a high school athlete looking to take their game to the next level, well, Premier National Sports is the team to help you through that entire process. Premier National Sports is actively helping a bunch of, just highly tuned athletic machines trying to take their game to the next level, learn everything about both the collegiate recruiting process and, hey, for the bank account, the ever-important NIL resources. So again, college football really is the wild, wild west. And if you just go ahead and tell your buddies, friends, family, whoever, help these rising high school athletes take their game to the next level with, again, Premier National Sports, personalized recruiting strategies, and NIL education. Check them out if you haven't yet. You can get in touch with their team at premiernationalsports.com. Dwain, I would like to think people like tight end also have their quarterback spot shirt up, but man, there might be a chance to upgrade because you have our streamer of the week, Trevor Lawrence, as your QB7 in the ranks, Dwain. I'm not going to lie, that's very high, but on the other side of things, once you get past the first 6 names, honestly, if you wanted to rank your QB14, QB7, like we can say there's one big long tier there, which honestly backs up the way we were kind of approaching the position throughout draft season. So talk about TeSlaa going up against the Panthers in week 1 and why you're so high on a man that, let's face it, you haven't always had the best things to say about over the years.
Yeah, I mean, look, you add Travis Hunter to the offense. We got to keep an eye on that. He's had a little bit of an upper body injury that he's dealing with. Does sound like he's going to be okay to go, though. But whenever you look at what we have with Trevor Lawrence, I mean, they've got a team total of 25.2, and this is using our new game model that's being run by Matthew Friedman. And so Friedman has taken his years and years of knowledge and we've now plugged it in. And so we don't just we start with the Vegas numbers, but then we have the adjustments based on what Friedman's done. So major hat tip to Friedman on this. So a team that we think is going to score a lot of points this week. Ian, if we look at the passing point, the fantasy points given up per game just through the air last year by the Carolina Panthers, 16.3. That's one of the top 5 marks in the league. Now their defense has changed some, so they could be a little bit better this year. But overall, those are just really good things. And then it's the things we've talked about with Trevor Lawrence all offseason. He is one of these players that, guys, he can spike in a passing capacity as well as a rushing capacity. Like he could go out here and he could run for 30 yards and rush for a touchdown, and he could throw for 260 and 2 touchdowns. And it's just really hard to find that combination. So when you put it all together with the matchup, I did want to be aggressive on Mr. Trevor Lawrence this week. He does project as my QB7. I've got him ranked right now as my QB9, but inside the top 12, like what Ian said. So yeah, love me some Trevor Lawrence this week.
And also next week, Dwayne, because they get the Bengals. So I have a feeling that we'll be talking about them again this time next week. Did want to talk about, guys, a defense and special team if you're into that kind of thing. I'm personally in several leagues that do still have the position. And it's not as bad as kickers, so we can appreciate, again, some true just warriors on the defensive side of the ball. And I want to give some love to the 49ers because if you guys have been listening to Dwayne and I do our real-time sports drafts, we have been trying to lay on this group as much as possible. And Dwayne, the three things I was trying to look for in DSTs to start the offseason, okay? I wanted a group that was hopefully good in real life, had a great early season schedule, and also was just in a position where I didn't have to reach on them in fantasy drafts. I don't want to draft the Broncos in round 12 when there are still other players I actively want. The four teams I landed on were the Steelers, Patriots, Cardinals, and 49ers. We all know the Steelers are going to be going in fantasy drafts of all shapes and sizes. I assumed the 49ers would be right there with them, but no, the Patriots and Cardinals right now are actually owned in more ESPN and Yahoo leagues than the 49ers, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why. San Fran has a 10.5 win total. That is better than any of these teams and better than many teams in the NFL. We also have a defense with two absolute stud, potential future Hall of Famers in Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, firmly in their primes. We were getting defensive coordinator Robert Saleh back from the Jets. He has led a top 8 defense in EPA allowed per play in 4 of his last 6 seasons. And most importantly, Dwayne, look at this schedule that we have on the screen right now. My goodness, man. Maybe the NFC West is better than we think. That said, Sam Darnold, Kyler Murray, and Matthew Stafford with the bad back. Wouldn't exactly say that's a sure thing. And then after that, man, it is literally a mix of bad offensive lines and quarterbacks who might be good but could also be turnover prone. I'm looking at you, Baker Mayfield, and the Buccaneers, potentially Michael Penix, although I know he did a good job, avoiding it last year. And man, Dwayne, I kid you not, guys, you can get through the whole season as long as you find a bye week stopper in week 14, because once we get to the fantasy playoffs, not to look too far ahead, but how can I help it? Titans, Colts, and Bears to end the season, Dwayne. 49ers, DST. I understand if you want to have, I would say the Texans, the Vikings, the Broncos, maybe another squad, the Steelers, for example. But 49ers, to me, top 5 DST. And it's incredible to me that they're only owned 17% of ESPN leagues.
Once you talked me through all of this, I couldn't take any of the other defenses. And the bonus of, I just talked about how many leagues we're managing, not having to worry about it until week 14, sounded like enough of a tiebreaker for me that it's like, I just want to take the 49ers every time. So yes, I'm with you. I love your call here on the 49ers.
Love me some 49ers. And now, guys, I will try to devote literally 1 minute to kickers because I do understand people are in those leagues. You shouldn't be, but maybe you are. Accordingly, Jaguars kicker Cam Little. This dude made a 70-yard field goal in the preseason, which in and of itself is pretty cool. Also was 5 for 6 from 50-plus last year. Dude has a leg on him. He's in that Jaguars offense that Dwayne just talked about, likely taking a step forward. And that's what we want to target because I sadly did take an hour out of my time this offseason to do kicker research. We don't want kickers from the Ravens or, Justin Tucker, I know is pretty good. A little bit of an exception there, but the Bills, these super high scoring offenses, guys, historically, they don't produce as good at kickers as teams that are more good, not great, which I think makes sense in our heads, okay? You want teams that can move the ball down the field, but have to settle for field goals instead of punching the ball into the end zone. To me, the Jaguars really do fit that bill. This Sunday in particular, 89 degrees, no wind, no rain chance, in Jacksonville. And it's just a situation where, the guy can kick the ball really far. And fun fact, Dwayne, I'm knocking on wood right now, Cam Little has never missed an extra point in his high school, college, or professional career. So I will take, full responsibility for jinxing that when it inevitably happens here this weekend. But Cam Little, man, someone that, again, just kind of surprised to see that he is still rostered on so little rosters on ESPN. So Broncos kicker Will Lutz, Falcons kicker Younghoe Koo would be other guys that, again, I think are in good, albeit maybe not the best offenses in the world, which is what we're trying to target. Do you have any words on kickers, Ryan?
The only other name I would throw out there would be Daniel Carlson. We know Pete Carroll is willing to kick the field goals. They are going to be playing in a dome. Daniel Carlson has recently been a good fantasy kicker, so he's an accurate guy. Geno Smith should be an upgrade with Ashton Genty. We've got Brock Bowers. But to your point, I think they're going to be more of a middle-of-the-road offense, not a top 3 offense. It's going to be punching all these scores in. And I could see Pete really trying to grind out some of these 3-4 point wins. And in those sort of scenarios, you really can lean into the kickers. So I would say Daniel Carlson would be the long shot sleeper this year for kicker.
And that's enough of that. If anyone tries to say I talked about kickers, I will deny it. And that's enough of this Fantasy Live show. We appreciate you for tuning in as always. If you like the show, then like the show. Always appreciate when you guys subscribe. Maybe even leave a nice little rating as well. We truly do appreciate it. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.